Now, the maximum is any genus, or the maximum in any genus is the cause of all in that genus, as fire, which is the maximum heat, is the cause of all hot things. Therefore, there must also be something which is to all beings the cause of their being, goodness, and every other perfection, and this we call God. Okay, this is a very Platonic argument, and it sounds to me like it would be an argument coming from Plato, or even from St. Augustine, who was an earlier medieval philosopher that we didn't cover in this course. But essentially, what Aquinas is doing here, he's appealing to different attributes, whether it be goodness, whether it be justice, or whether it be beauty, and ultimately arguing that in order for us to make a judgment that something is more or less beautiful, there has to be an absolute standard of beauty. Or to revert back to Plato, as Plato would say, there has to be an ultimate form of beauty. And it's that ultimate form of beauty, pure beauty itself, that gives rise to more or less beautiful things. So we look out and we see something beautiful. And then we look out and we see something ugly, okay, that doesn't quite live up to that standard of beauty. And we make the judgment that one object A, whatever it is more beautiful than object B. Well, in order for this to work, Aquinas thinks, and even Plato before him, there has to be an ultimate standard of beauty. Or how else could we make this judgment? How else could we come to this conclusion that one thing is more beautiful than another? Well, obviously, object A would be higher up the chain of beauty than object B, which is why we're able to understand and see that object A is more beautiful than object B. Well, like the other arguments, Aquinas argues that ultimately we have to come to absolute beauty itself, the absolute embodiment of what it means to be beautiful. And according to Aquinas, only God could embody that perfection. So whether it's beauty or goodness or justice, Aquinas thinks there has to be that absolute pinnacle in order for it to make sense. In order to say that anything is good or just or beautiful, there has to be that maximum. And these, he thinks, would tend to be attributes of God, whether it's God's justice or his goodness or his beauty. Okay, finally, the fifth way. This is the argument from design. It looks like it's the shortest of the fifth way, so I'll go ahead and read it here. Aquinas writes, quote, "The fifth way is taken from the governance of the world," or think of governance as the design of the world. "We see things which lack intelligence, such as natural bodies, act for an end. And this is evident from their acting always or nearly always in the same way, so as to obtain the best result. Hence it is plain that not fortuitously, but designedly, do they achieve their end. Now, whatever lacks intelligence cannot move towards an end unless it be directed by some being endowed with knowledge and intelligence, as the arrow is shot to its mark by the archer. Therefore, some intelligent being exists by whom all natural things are directed to their end, and this being we call God." What Aquinas is doing here is giving us a picture of the universe where everything has a purpose. Everything has an end or a goal that it's striving to achieve. So even natural bodies, something like an acorn, for example. Well, the acorn, once fully developed, will grow into an oak tree. However, the acorn has no intelligence. The acorn isn't telling itself, okay, now it's time to grow into the oak tree. it simply does this naturally. Well, according to Aquinas, nothing simply happens at random. Nothing happens by luck. There has to be an intelligent being that's directing this process. Because acorns, if put into the right environment, will develop into an acorn. And we know that through nature and through experience and by observing it over and over. Well, he thinks there has to be some intelligent being that's guiding this process. And that intelligent being would be God. Some have built upon this argument by arguing that since the universe manifests design, and all designs point to a designer, it would follow that the universe had to have been caused by an intelligent designer. Right? Someone with the intelligence to create the universe in the intricate way that it operates. So in contemporary times, those who follow the intelligent design movement will know that essentially this is what they argue. Right? The universe is a designed universe, and because designs have to be designed by someone with intelligence, they don't just randomly, spontaneously happen in nature, that points to God, or a divine being with intelligence who could create such a universe, to create such an object. Now that's a brief, all too brief summation of what they argue, but if you think about it, you'll get the point. That design points to a designer. Okay, so that is the fifth of Thomas's 5 ways. Hopefully this helped you out a little bit. It's a short reading, but it can be an overly complex and difficult reading. One of the things I want you to think about as I close here is, okay, even if we grant that Aquinas has proved that God exists, an unmoved mover, a first cause, a necessary being, absolute perfection, and an intelligent designer. Is it possible to make the leap from this to the God of Christianity, or to the God of Islam, or to the God of Judaism? What exactly are we left with? Okay, so think about that. Think about, even if Thomas has proved that God exists, does it tell us much about this God who exists in terms of his character, his attributes, what he demands of human beings, what he requires of us, etc.? Okay, see what you can come up with. Let me know, and I will see you next time.